The World Bank Country Director in Nigeria, Dr. Matthew Verhit, has urged the federal government to tackle inflation, particularly food inflation, to bridge the gap between policy and people. Dr. Verhit made the call at the World Bank's latest Nigeria Development Update. The report, titled From Policy to People, Bringing the Reforms Gains Home, was released in Abuja. He said the NDU report showed that Nigeria had made significant strides in stabilizing its economy. Verhit stressed that growth has picked up, revenues have risen, debt indicators are improving, the foreign exchange market is stabilizing, reserves are rising, and inflation is finally beginning to trend downwards. But he, however, said despite the stabilization gains, many Nigerians are still struggling with eroded purchasing power, while poverty remains a pressing issue. The World Bank director pointed out that the report estimated that 139 million Nigerians presently live in poverty. Well, that's the big one here. And my guest is Mr. Opeyemi Agbaje. He is the Chief Executive Officer, RTC Advisory Services, and also should I say acting chairman, PENCOM. Thank you so much. It's good to have you start the week with us on Business Nigeria. Good afternoon to you, sir.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much for being here. It was a busy week last week. NESG, ICANN conference, the whole of Abuja was full, and World Bank came with this report on Nigeria, stating that Nigeria economy is stabilizing, but 139 people, the poverty line, 139 million. Yes, thank you for the correction, sir. Now live in poverty. The government has come to say, no, this is not in reality with what is really on ground. But I want you, with your understanding of these reforms and the fallout of it, what do you make of this report from the IMF?
Well, I can't deny the reality of poverty. Large-scale poverty. We didn't just start the journey to large-scale poverty. It's been there. It's been growing. One of my critics, I recall writing a newspaper column in my Business Day column over a decade ago, taking reforms to the social sector. And that was under President Obasanjo, arguing that, yeah, we have now reformed the macroeconomics, but we still have to do reforms around education, skills, employability, poverty, and all of those things. And so it's a long-term problem, but admittedly escalated somewhat by the difficult economic choices we had to make in 2023. I would say that I didn't like that figure. Sounds a bit unrealistic to me. 139 million. If 139 million Nigerians are living under poverty, we won't be able to walk on the streets. That's my sense. We will be near the Hobbesian state of nature. We will be near chaos and social dysfunction. We are considerably advanced in that direction, but I think we should calm down. Like I said, on another forum a week ago, when you're reforming an economy, and even when you're even trying to tackle things like poverty and all of that, you're going to have, the data will lag. What I know, like I think I told you too my last time,
yes,
when your economy is growing, I mean, what do nations say about the best way? What does international economics teach us about the way to take people out of poverty? How did China take people out of poverty? It's not by necessarily, it is by continuously growing their economy. And as they were doing all of those reforms per sector and growing their economy, people were being taken out of. So the surest way to take people out of poverty is to make sure that your economy is growing and that sectors are expanding, jobs are being created. So I can feel that when I see data that says 4.23% growth, when I see all of the positive economic data, I know that a year down the line, the data will lag, but a year down the line, I will see that some jobs were created. If your economy is going, jobs are being created. If exports are rising, some people are producing the exports. If trade surpluses are increasing, some people are producing the exports that are resulting in those surpluses. If all of this data means something good is going on, the data may not yet show it, but over time, you will begin, if you sustain that trajectory of continuous GDP growth, continued growth in your reserves, in your surpluses, in your, if you continue to do all of that, the data will eventually show that you are redressing poverty somewhat. Nevertheless, I mean, what are practical things we can do? As I thought, because when we discussed this session, as I thought about each of the sectors, I realized that we're actually preaching to the converted. You will see seeds of everything we can, in the actions government is already taking or has already taken. However, we need to expand those seeds. We need to grow them, germinate them, and let them sprout and result in bigger. So even in the World Bank report, they said the number one thing they mentioned was food inflation. Yes, food inflation. How do we deal with food inflation? How many times have we said that on this program? That the key thing, if I want to think about the problems of a poor man, of poverty, the first thing, in fact, the Yorubas, as I was thinking about this, I realized the Yorubas understood multi-dimensional poverty. Because there's this phrase we had when we were kids, once food is taken out of the multi-dimensions of poverty, then the poverty is manageable. So we must deal with the issue of food. Okay. We've always acknowledged that it is complicated by the problem of insecurity, which is affecting food production and distribution and the food value chain and increasing the cost of food. So the most significant thing we can do at this point in time is to take actions that reduce the insecurity and its impact on the food value chain. Beyond that, there are things we can do with taking the value chain. Now, focus on agricultural policy, like we attempted to do some time back, looking at the value chains of different commodities that are critical to the masses of the people: cassava, tomato, pepper, everything, beans, rice, and just taking each of those value chains and asking what intervention can we make in each of these, with credit to the farmers, with agricultural, agronomic support, with seeds, with extension services, all of these things that can then expand the production of food so that the prices can go down, with storage, with preservation, with processing, along the entire value chain, with information for farmers and all of that. Food is critical, and we have to deal with that. I think if we achieve savings from both the security-related inflation around food and the agronomy-related inflation around food, all the agricultural factors, we could get, I think that we will have a significant increase in the yield, in the sectoral growth from agriculture, and a significant reduction in the price of agricultural commodities. I mean, the growth rate in the sector is down to unacceptable levels, 2%, 1 point something percent. That's not the growth we should be getting from agriculture. We used to, when I started looking at agricultural growth rates, it used to be consistently over 5%. Now we are. So if we do that, we can reduce the cost. What else do the poor suffer from? Transportation, housing. Those will be the next two. Again, have we been talking about transportation, CNG cars, all of that? Yeah. But again, what else can we do with public transportation, with the quality of rural-urban roads, with anything that has an impact on the cost and the quality of transportation, both of goods and services. That's for transportation. And then in the urban area, I mean, that one I was focused on production, on especially agriculture. But in the urban area, public urban mass transit. Again, you can't say that we have not discussed this. Look at what Lagos has done with the rail and all of those things. We look at the lag ride and all of those. So it's not as, I think for most of these things, we are talking about scale, efficiency, refocusing, refining, and expanding the things we can do. Health, public health, primary health centers. There's a big initiative we're aware of in relation to that. Again, how can we scale? How can we improve efficiency? If our people are healthy, for most of the poor, you find that what wipes out a poor man, or even a middle-class man and turns him into poverty, is a health challenge. And therefore, we have to focus on preventive health care. We have to focus on these primary health centers, make sure people are getting their vaccinations, make sure they're doing checks, make sure they're being screened for all these diseases that can become catastrophic. Yes. Make sure they're being screened so that things are detected early. Make sure malaria does not, tuberculosis do not kill children and young people. Those are preventive health concerns that don't necessarily have to cost the government so much money. You must focus, if we want to deal with poverty, we focus on the youths. We focus on women who can be agents of the poverty reduction, because we know, I mean, I know from personal experience through an NGO I run, the impact of giving resources to women who tend to be more responsible with their utilization of those resources, and who tend to be focused on their children and the education of their children, the health of their children. So those are infrastructure, power, especially power, which can reduce the cost of SME doing business and all of that. So I don't think anything we would say would be strange to the heirs of government. True. I think all of these things are receiving attention. I have celebrated NELFund. That's taking one piece of the cake and say we'll focus on tertiary education, enabling Nigerians to attend universities and polytechnics and tertiaries without pain. And what I said to somebody who was contesting with me whether that value was, you know, if that resource requirement is removed from the parent, perhaps you have created resources in the hands of that parent with which she can do an SME business and prosper and at least increase his or her contribution to the economy. So we the other thing we don't say sufficiently, because the more I thought about this thing, many of the things that are needed to be done, will be done at the state government level. Extension services for farmers, agronomy support for farmers, primary health care institutions. These are many of these things that local government and state government initiatives. But the conversation is always about the federal government. But unfortunately, we have not managed to build a conversation of public accountability around our state governments and around our local governments. And we continue to suffer for it. So what I think we need to deal with the issue of poverty is concerted and consistent action over the medium to long term. My bad news, poverty alleviation, there's no short-term fix, and there's no magic wand. We have to work on it. The scale of poverty, if it is true that we have up to even 100 million people in poverty, that's a major challenge. It's a major one. Exactly. So it will take concerted and consistent action at federal government level, state government level, local government level, even private sector, multilateral agencies, NGOs, and civil society. We have to have a kind of Marshall Plan for poverty eradication that involves multi-stakeholders, local and international, and that's cross-sectoral approaches. before we can make a dent over the medium to long term.
You've taken like 2 of my questions already in one. But I want to talk about debt to GDP ratio, which really declined significantly. I think that is something that should be talked about. I think about 39.3% with what we heard from the last speech of the president. What do you also make of this?
Yeah, that's mathematics, really. If the GDP has gone up by 34% due to the rebasing,
yes,
and continues to grow because of GDP growth,
yes,
then the debt to GDP ratio will be moderated. And that's exactly. So one of the biggest positives out of GDP rebasing, which I don't think I highlighted sufficiently when we had the conversation here on GDP rebasing, was the reduction of our debt to GDP ratio. So and we have to keep that up also because, again, it expands fiscal space for the government.
Interesting stuff. Our revenue is also revving up. So the IMF agreed to all of this in that same report.
Yes. No. There is no. I think that I regard the report that you just quoted, the NDU from the World Bank. It was a positive report.
Yes, it was.
It was just telling you the next area of focus. And it is correct. So it is true. They first highlighted all of the signs of economic stabilization, which we have discussed here over and over again. FX reserves are rising. Current exchange rate has stabilized. GDP growth is going up. Your exports are rising. Your trade surplus, you have recording consistent trade surpluses. Sectoral growth is increasing. So it was a very positive assessment of the reforms that the government has undertaken. It then moved to, so what next? And I totally agree with them that the next area of focus has to be addressing, because we all know that the one consequence of inflation is that people's purchasing power is decreased. One consequence of devaluation of the currency, things get more expensive and the poor suffer a purchasing power decline. We know all the one consequence of subsidy removal was the price of petrol goes up, and therefore transportation becomes, so they're not wrong. I think the figures they quoted can be debated, and I certainly will join in the debate, but we're agreed on the fact that they impair it, and I don't think government itself is arguing with them, except about the number of people. Yeah. But in terms of that priority on redressing poverty, focusing on employment, focusing on, agriculture, food, and all of that, I think we're agreed on that.
So, like I said, you hit my other question, because I was asking about particular things to be done to address the challenges of the vulnerable ones, and you've clearly identified all of that. And like we said, government's already embarking on some of them.
And I can add some more. So, focus on jobs, on skills.
Yes.
How do we increase? So the best things to help people. I mean, I challenge. We had this debate in my MBA class in the last 2 weeks, and the guys were saying, yeah, but these reforms have caused pain. And then I asked them, why are you doing a relatively expensive MBA at Lagos Business School? Why are you doing it? Is it easy? Is it that you won't do well getting into employment right away? Why are you paying millions of naira? It's because you are investing in your future. You're paying a price for what you think may be a better future. That is the point we need to make about the reforms. If we didn't do them, we will sustain an untenable equilibrium, which is not an equilibrium because it's untenable. And we will be pushing the evil day further forward. It's better we confront the issue, deal with it, but then we agree we must deal with the negative consequences of those reforms. So focus on skills for your people. Focus on preventive health care. Focus on access to credit for the MSMEs. focus on venture capital so that young entrepreneurs can get capital when they have a brilliant idea. Pension system, what can it do to release funds for agriculture, for housing? For me, that must be a big priority. How do the pension funds get into agriculture, into, most importantly, into infrastructure, into housing, into power, into transportation systems? So that, you see, all of those things is the cost of doing business for everybody. Rich, poor, everybody. If they're in inner city roads, the MSME operator can do better. So those are the things that we can do in terms of anybody who is hoping that government will do one magic policy that will wipe away poverty in 6 months. That's probably not realistic. But let's see evidence that we are consistently pushing sector by sector, issue by issue, and addressing the issue of poverty.
Let's wrap up with the expected implementation of tax laws by January 2026, and that's really been a bit topical. Everyone is looking at what will happen in 2026. So considering where we are, what do you make, and where you sit, what do you make of this implementation?
I actually think that the only thing I have suggested we may defer is the 5% or so tax on fuel, on road, on fuel, which in these circumstances may be deferred. But overall, except you have been evading taxes. So the person that has a problem is the person who has been evading his taxes, who has not been paying, and he just wants that to continue. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem that will continue. But otherwise, what these tax reforms do is that they actually ease the burden of taxation on the poor. They lift up all the thresholds for both company income tax and personal income tax. So those who are marginal, who are marginalized, vulnerable, they're actually exempted in most cases. It removes VAT on many commodities that are necessities, including, I think, food and so on, and maybe even educational materials and so on. So actually the tax system as designed has actually eased the burden on the poor. But those who are, I believe that many of those who are shouting is because they were not paying tax. And they suspect that the enforcement of this new system is going to be more thorough, and it's going to be more, in fact, that's the objective. Exempt those who are marginal, and then focus on covering a larger number of people. So if you haven't been paying, I have no succor to offer. I suspect that you should try and comply. But if you have been paying and it's been difficult, I think you will have cause to rejoice, because in many cases, for those who are barely surviving, they've been exempted from many of these taxes. I think that we should not link enforcement or commencement of the revised tax to the political calendar. I don't think we should think of taxation in terms of politics. I actually think, like a gentleman I was on a panel with in the last 2 weeks commented, I actually think taxation, and the evidence suggests that 2 things strengthen democracies, at least 2 things, maybe there are more. 1, you pay taxes. You vote. When you pay taxes, you are likely to vote. You are likely to write letters to your member of parliament. You are likely to write letters to your government. You are likely to be interested more in governance and the political system. That's 1, if you pay your taxes. The second one is if you own a home. Because once you own a home, you become stuck. You become invested in that environment. You are likely to engage with your councillor about the drains, about the insecurity in the area, about the touts who are disturbing the area. So home ownership, I have a strong desire to use for policy to use social home ownership as well as the commercial home ownership, but look for, so create mortgage systems, create systems of social home ownership for the very vulnerable, for the very poor. They will never be able, so they need subsidized home ownership one way or the other. Anywhere in the world that happens to the poor who get social housing, and then facilitate processes by which even for, as long as it's for home ownership, it's not for commercial developments or luxury housing, it's for functional home ownership for middle class and poor people. I think that we can look for ways to aid that process, make it possible for the average person to own a home.
So, Kwame Agbadi, thank you so much for being on the show. We could even wrap the whole 1 hour because this conversation is so interesting. I must thank you so much, CEO RTC Advisory Services Limited and acting chairman of PENCOM. Thank you so much for starting the week with us as always.
Thank you very much.
You.
My pleasure.
All right. There was still to come. We'll review some topical issues and recommendations at the just concluded Nigerian Economic Summit. That's our next 31. Development economist, Professor